The biggest concern for Korea's economic policymakers in recent days has been sluggish domestic economy and the health of Asia's fourth largest economy. It's largely dependent on small businesses. In fact, as of 2009, in Korea's small and medium enterprises accounted for 99.9% of all business establishments, and they hired 87.7% of domestic workers as a whole. Well, this as opposed to a handful of conglomerates that lead this economy in the form of strong exporters. Analysts think this needs to be changed. Dr. Byoung-joo is here with me for a discussion. So, Dr. Kim, we have new data that shows that most businesses in Korea are way too small in size on a global standard, and this is a problem.
Yeah, this is a very interesting number that just came out thanks to the new research by Korea Institute for Finance. Let's bring up the illustration here, comparing the Korea's case with the United States here. What you're looking at here on the screen is comparing all enterprises, all businesses in two countries. Korea has about 3.5 million businesses, as opposed to the United States 6.7 million business. And if you break them down in terms of employment size here, that's what you're looking at. In Korea, surprisingly, well, I think we knew this before, but the number is still very surprising. 83% of Korea's all businesses have one or up to 4 employees, including self-employed here. And
so
that's
4 or less.
Yeah, 4 or less. And this is like 83%. And compare that with the United States case, 49%. And, as you go further, still same story applies here. And this is pretty shocking. Basically, what's happening is this is a very serious problem for Korea, particularly because here in Korea, the economy is driven by a very small number of gigantic chaebols, right? Producing conglomerates, producing smartphones and automobiles here. So on the top, we already have very small number of gigantic business groups that are accounting for a large size of GDP. And then at the bottom, we have all these very small businesses that account in terms of number of a big size of the economy, which are not really producing much of the value because most of the values are being produced by a very small number of chaebol here. So this is a very serious imbalance problem that we are talking about.
Right, and especially with conglomerates these days are reaching out to different sectors that has never been tapped by conglomerates before, such as bakeries and things like that. That had been a problem in recent days. And such a landscape in Korean economy results in economic loss.
Right, exactly. This particular study we are talking about today also calculated economic loss because of this structure here. And this is what you're looking at here. We're not comparing Korea with other advanced economies as much here, but even with India or China, where you would actually expect a large number of small firms here, Korea still ranks much more serious records, shows a much more serious problem here. You might ask, what is total factor productivity? Well, total factor productivity includes not only just the labor productivity, but the productivity related to the capital invested and then energy use and the overall system use and so on, and everything else. So how efficient the economy is. And this calculation put out by Korea Institute of Finance just tells us because of this large number of what seems to be a natural large number of small businesses, Korea is actually experiencing this kind of opportunities lost here. That shows like minus 13% as opposed to even double the number of India's case, minus 6%. And even with China, we can't even calculate how many times this would be. So indeed, just the numbers that are being shown here on the screen is something or challenge that Korean economy needs to overcome.
Right, even compared to emerging economies, we're doing much worse than them.
Exactly.
So how do we explain why we have this undesirable imbalance of structure or imbalance for small-sized enterprises?
I think the explanation could really vary. I mean, we can come up with a long list of explanations, but some of these people who have been critical about the chaebol dependent structure of the economy would say actually what's happening is some of these small firms would become successful, would grow into a bigger size and become a middle-sized firm. And then when they become successful, the way you thrive here in this economy is to supply the parts to the chaebol businesses. And when that supplier business becomes very successful, often the critics of chaebol are saying often they are taken over by chaebol. So they're kind of like wiped out from the scene.
Right.
So that kind of like removes the middle level here. And on the top level, traditionally for several decades, Korean economy has been being developed based on several success of just a few number of industries, such as electronics, which includes semiconductor, mobile phones, but also automobiles and petrochemicals, steel and shipbuilding. I mean, I mentioned several, but this is still, in comparison with other advanced economies, is a very small number of sectors that Korean economy is dependent upon. So concentration on the top and the middle part being missing, basically taken over by the big giants. And then what you're left with is just small, just this big size of the very, very, very small businesses.
So, always the million-dollar question in the end, what can we do to improve this structural imbalance?
Some people, most people actually, are saying basically the Korean economic policymakers, what they should focus on are these words: diversification, variety, and balance. And now these people are getting concerned because the current economic, chief economic policymaker, Choi Kyung-won, for instance, as an example, even President Park has mentioned this: growth, growth, growth. But these people are saying, is growth really the way to go here, or something to focus on here? Or do we have to really, growth is more immediate thing. Growth can be only within the given structure here, growth can be produced by these big giants here. And continuing on with producing growth, helping these big giants, is that the way to go? A lot of people are saying maybe we should focus on more long-term goals, such as diversification, variety, and imbalance, even if that means actually slower growth for some time here. So that's what people are saying. Let's think more ways to help smaller and medium businesses. We are all talking about helping small and medium businesses, but we haven't really found really viable ideas that we can sell to the people here. So one short example, we're running out of time, but one short example would be removing ways to discriminate small companies when they go, for instance, government projects or public projects. Often they ask, oh, okay, what's your work record? What have you done so far? What's your capital size? And if those are too small, they're often left out. And that kind of practices needs to be improved.
Well, perhaps we could learn from the Japanese example of craftsmanship and also Germany's, because they have small-sized firms which are very strong in one particular industry or one particular sector of an industry. So probably that's the way to go, because that will trickle down to helping the lives of the ordinary people. One
dilemma is if you're extremely successful as a craftsmanship or developer, whatever, skeptics are saying here in Korea you can be taken over by chaebols. So another dilemma. Another dilemma, and perhaps fixes here and there needs to be done in the Korean economy. Things will have to go forward together. Yeah. All right, Dr. Kim Byoung-joo, thank you so much. Thanks.